without further ado, I will have our beloved president, Juan Ed Cruzado, come up here and give you the first address.
Thank you so much, Todd, and good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning and welcome to your university, Montana State, and to our wonderful Museum of the Rockies. As Todd said, my name is Juan Ed Cruzado, and I'm honored to serve as president of Montana's Land Grant University. As we begin, I wish to welcome all of you to Montana and to our beautiful Museum of the Rockies, and we hope you're enjoying your visit to the Big Sky State, and we are honored and glad that you're here. I would like to thank a very few important people and organizations who have made this wonderful event possible. First, to the Terra Foundation of the American Art and its Assistant Grants Manager, Ryan Harrop. Thank you for your generous support and partnership. We're also grateful to Daryl Paulson and Marsha Brown with the Paulson Brown Collection of Asian Art. Thank you for your continued generosity. And what to say about our very own College of Arts and Architecture, as well as the college's Dean Adams, and its professors Todd Larkin and Hua Li. Thank you for your excellent work to bring us together here and to make this event come to life. I would also like to give a special recognition to Max Baucus, former U.S. Senator and former U.S. Ambassador to China, who is here with us. Ambassador Baucus, welcome to your university. Thank you for your many contributions to our nation, and thank you for your presence today. Finally, but this is the most important part, I would like to recognize the MSU students who are here with us this morning and many who were not able to join us. Good morning, Bobcats. I'm glad you're here taking advantage of this wonderful opportunity. Art, it is said, is in the eye of the beholder. But to me, art is indispensable. Irrespective of the magnitude or importance of any human endeavor, the truth is we cannot live without art. The artistic representation of Asian migrants during the late 1800s and early 1900s, our conference subject, is a fascinating and important line of inquiry for the American West. East Asian migrants and settlers, largely from China and Japan, have abided in the West since the 1850s and in the Northern Rockies since the 1860s. Museums and archives across the region, including here in Bozeman and in other communities in Montana, provide documentation, images, and artifacts revealing a vibrant culture that deserves to be studied. Montana State University occupies a fairly central location in the Northern Rockies, which has made our area a historically significant point of convergence for people of different races and cultures seeking new opportunities to engage in hard work and make a better life for themselves and their families. The foundation of a land-grant university here only added to that intersection. So, when Dr. Larkin asked me to speak today, he suggested that perhaps as a way of providing some context to our conference topic, I would spend a few minutes speaking about the role of the land-grant university, as their origins, the origins of land-grant universities, harken back to the same time period covered in this conference. Montana State University is one of a privileged group of institutions of higher education that were created by the Congressional Morrill Act of 1862, a congressional bill proposed by Justin Morrill, then a representative from the state of Vermont, and later a senator from that state. A little bit of trivia. Senator Morrill would go on to serve as the first chair of Senate Finance Committee. And almost 150 years later, Montana's Max Baucus occupied that same position. Isn't that right? The Morrill Act established something that was new in the world, absolutely revolutionary. It opened one public university in each state and territory of the Union. And its stated purpose said or read that this new brand of colleges and universities would educate the sons and daughters of the working families of America. Another trivia, it's the first time in a congressional bill that the word daughters appears. And that is a very important thing, because up until that time, colleges and universities in America had been following the same traditional model of higher education as in the old continent, meaning colleges and universities were, for the most part, private, up until that moment, reserved for wealthy families, and let's face it, limited to men coming from very wealthy families. We changed that. The Morrill Act literally changed the world. Passed in the middle of the Civil War, that far-sighted legislation looked beyond the war and constitutes a testament to what is possible when we work together to promote bold ideas. When, rather than being constrained by difficult circumstances, we envision a better and brighter future, as in this case, by educating generations of individuals, generations of Americans and the world. President Abraham Lincoln signed the Morrill Act on July the 2nd, 1862. Since then, these land-grant universities have had as their main objectives agriculture, the mechanical arts, that is to say engineering, but also the congressional bill said that these institutions would not be limited to those fields, but rather aim to provide an education, quote, in the several pursuits and professions of life. If the Pacific Railroad Act and the Homestead Act, two additional congressional acts of 1862, if they afforded the horizontal mobility that we are discussing today, the Morrill Act of 1862 afforded the vertical social mobility that strengthened democracy in America. So we are so proud of MSU today. Since our founding on February the 16th, 1893, Montana State has been linked to improving the lives of all Montanans through education, developing innovative solutions, and promoting jobs and prosperity for all. Montana State University that you're visiting today for your conference is stronger than ever before. We are the largest, fastest growing university in Montana, and this fall we set an enrollment record and became the first university in the state to surpass 17,000 students. Since our serendipitous beginning more than 130 years ago, Montana State has become renowned for its teaching, research, and innovation. The university is recognized globally for the quality of its graduates. Let me just mention one of them. Maurice Hilleman, who was originally from Miles City, and Hilleman thought he would work at the local JCPenney at the turn of the century, and he decided to come to Montana State College at the time with a scholarship, and that enabled him to pursue a medical career. Maurice Hilleman had a genius for biochemistry and went on to become the inventor of 40 new vaccines, such as measles, rubella, pneumonia, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, and 8 of the 13 vaccines that we administer to children today. When he died in 2005, the New York Times said that Hilleman had saved the lives of more people than any other person in history. Other graduates have become artists, Hollywood directors, now noted mountain climbers, NFL football coaches, and Olympians, among others. In short, our graduates have become, through their own education, our greatest contributors to the history of Montana and our country at large. But in the end, in any of these endeavors, art continues to be indispensable. We cannot live without art, and this conference will provide visible testimony of its relevance and importance as we study that important influence of the Asian community in Montana. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce the Dean of our wonderful College of Arts and Architecture, Dean Adams. Dean Adams.
Thank you, everyone. As President Cruzado said, I am Dean Adams, my name and my title, so I am Dean. And while all of us love working with and for President Cruzado, none of us like to follow her. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone here today. I'm just so excited about this conference and the small role that I could play in helping support this important endeavor. I want to extend a special thanks to those of you who have traveled to be here, and of course I also want to thank the students and the faculty and staff and community members that are here today as well. Ambassador Bacchus, I grew up in Montana and he was my senator for my whole life, and I really appreciate you and Melody Haynes and the work that you do to support our community. So thank you for being here. I'm excited by the program that's being offered and thrilled by the outstanding community of scholars that have come together for this conference. I will attend as much of it as I can. I can't be at all of it, but I'm very excited by what you're doing, and I'm interested in every one of the panels. Went through them with a fine-tooth comb and would love to be here for all of them. To build on what President Cruzado said, I think the arts define us. They define what it means to be human and what it is to be human. And I think back to Ellen Disianki, a researcher in Seattle, independent researcher in Seattle, who wrote a book called Homo Aestheticus, where she claimed that we were misnamed, that sapience was not the defining characteristic of what it means to be human, but rather engagement with the aesthetics is what it means to be human. And I really think that she's right. And I think through this conference, through the critical discovery made in the arts and humanities, that you will have a wonderful time tearing apart, digging into, building upon what it means to be human through your research and your discussions that will happen from this. It's very exciting. I have to say that my personal artistic practice has been completely defined and informed by the histories of East Asian ceramics especially Japan and China and Korea. And so I'm thrilled by this. I'm grateful for the dedicated work of the conference co-chairs, Professor Todd Larkin and Professor Wadley. Thank you, both of you. I know it's been an immense amount of work. And on top of all the other excellent work that you do. So thank you for that. I also want to thank the Terra Foundation for their generous support, and Darren Paulson and Marcia Brown, their collection of Asian art, for their continued support of the School of Art at Montana State University. And welcome all of you. I hope you have a wonderful conference. I hope to engage with you one-on-one in conversations as well. So have a wonderful time here, and thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce Professor Todd Larkin.
Well, as you've heard, I'm Todd Larkin, Professor of Art History at Montana State University. I have the great pleasure to introduce the theme of this three-day conference, Representations of East Asian Migrants and Settlers in the Western United States between 1850 and 1929. To put it succinctly, we might say that representations refers to artistic depictions or literary portrayals, that East Asian migrants and settlers refers to the largely Chinese itinerant workers of the 1850s to 1870s, the Japanese temporary workers of the 1880s to 1910s, and the Asian communities that were born of the necessity of seeking organized protection, planting family roots, and asserting legal rights. That Western United States refers not only to West Coast port cities, which we always hear about, that accommodated passengers arriving on ships from Guangdong province of southeastern China and Chugoku and Kyushu regions of southwestern Japan, but also to Rocky Mountain towns that sprang up to provision those hired to lay rails or to mine gold, silver, and copper. To a large degree, the terms of our inquiry are motivated by the ambiguities of undertaking research in museums, archives, and libraries. For example, I had the incredible opportunity in the summer of 2021, thanks to a Faculty Excellence grant, right? Those are very useful, to trace the manifestation of Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism in the art and ritual of Asian migrants and settlers in the Northern Rockies between about 1850 and 1918, a topic that led me to state historical archives in Boise, Butte, Helena, Evanston, and Denver. Every archive portrayed a curious mixture of documentary photographs and newspaper sensationalist journalism and picturesque book illustrations, which made it a challenge to distinguish, say, a migrant's expression of community from a colonizer's stereotype of the quote-unquote foreign devil. Where it became especially confusing was when East Asian settlers adopted the dress, customs, and mannerisms of white Americans in a sign of assimilation, and European artists continued to pose them in stereotyped occupations, appearance, and attitudes. Very confusing thing to try to separate in an archival context. My solution then was to accept the idea that the American quote-unquote West, a nebulous collection of territories whose boundaries were established with utter disregard for indigenous inhabitants and rival nations, nevertheless became a place of convergence for people of various races and cultures in search of a better life. Some looking for steady work, others determined to establish a business or make a home, and still others fighting for equal rights and legal recourse. In doing so, these groups encountered each other and found ways to express their differences, sometimes constructively, sometimes destructively. I see representation as an essential part of a negotiation wherein Asian, American, and European artists and writers portrayed themselves and the quote-unquote other according to their own values, which often came with embedded experiences, ideologies, and prejudices. I wondered if a scholarly conference about images might disentangle these perceptual and interpretive threads, or affirm the complexity of that tangled skein. Which brings me to the purpose of our gathering here. Comprehensive published histories of Asian art and culture in the American West are a recent phenomenon, very recent. What distinguishes our inquiry today from that of previous groups of scholars is a desire to understand how the Asian migrant or settler and American colonizer, European immigrant pouring into the West between the Gold Rush and the Great Depression had something to express or something to articulate about their encounters with each other, and did so in a way that was particular to their cultures and was inevitably stirred or changed in the process of that encounter. Artists and writers contributed to a rich array of representations of East Asians in different genres: documentary, picturesque, academic, expressive, illustrative, satirical, that promoted a range of views: ethnographic, nationalistic, empathetic, propagandistic, associational, filial, ethnic, gendered. So over the next few days, this scholarly community will illuminate not only how European American artists and writers imposed naturalized, stereotyped, racist, and other identities, but also how Asian American creative peoples deflected, contested, or rejected such images in the construction of their own identities. As you can see from the program, the conference is comprised of two themes. The first theme is daily life in the West. The second is contested claims. In the first half of the conference, presenters will discuss images of East Asian migrants and settlers in contexts of labor, leisure, worship, and celebration. In the second half of the conference, presenters will discuss representations of Asians in contexts of association, discrimination, and exclusion, yet with a persistent sense of self-affirmation and assertion. In the last session, contemporary Asian American artists will share how they have engaged with, referenced, or distanced the past in their art. What we are doing here is groundbreaking, going beyond the monolithic notion of a quote-unquote Asian experience represented by movements in major West Coast cities to embrace a range of diverse historical and creative perspectives of Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and other migrants and settlers who encountered indigenous tribes, European immigrants, and American speculators and officials throughout the West. Art or cultural history is a discipline that requires intensive study of data, as well as tremendous self-awareness to write a credible, critical, or consistent narrative. I think it's fair to say that humanities professors are as nervous as their students about projects requiring collaboration. This is because they all survived an episode where they had to carry a project through to completion almost single-handedly. I want to acknowledge my collaborator, Professor Hua Li, of the Department of Modern Languages at MSU, who patiently read and edited the conference proposal and then rose to every challenge associated with hosting such an event. Thank you for being so knowledgeable, articulate, innovative, and frustratingly imperturbable in the midst of every planning storm. Early in the development of this conference, Carrie Haslett and Amy Gunderson at the Terra Foundation for American Art kindly listened to our ideas and offered important advice to ensure that a project about Asian American and European American visual and textual constructions included the major stakeholders. This is extraordinarily progressive to me today, that you cannot apply for a grant on a theme such as this without the grant agencies demanding collaboration with the major stakeholders. That's a huge change during my lifetime. Okay. Finally, during the early stages of ideation, we also benefited from the advice of Bruce Robertson at the University of California, Elisa Alexander at Stanford University, and of course the great Emily Burns from the University of Oklahoma. Okay, so I have now introduced this subject. I would just say a few instructional notes in the near future. We're really happy to have everybody here, and we are recording in the back so that all of these proceedings can be distributed nationally, which is a Terra Foundation requirement. But if at any point you feel your phone shake a little bit, maybe turn off the ringtone, might be helpful to the endeavor of those in the back. And if you have any needs that can be satisfied by this museum, they will be. We have two wonderful student workers out front, and you can ask them virtually anything, and they know where to direct you. Well then, welcome to our 3-day conference. Thank you.